Most people don't know that Mark Dice, yes, Mark Dice, who we're reacting to today, along with some other conservative pundits, Mark Dice spent years spreading anti-Mormon conspiracy theories. I do like Mark Dice today. I watch him periodically, along with a lot of the other conservative pundits that I'm going to be somewhat critical about today. But I do love them. I like some of the things they talk about. So don't hate on me and say that I think that they're all wrong about everything. But yeah, Mark Dice spent years spreading anti-Mormon conspiracy theories, and now he's shocked. He's shocked that his own rhetoric is being called anti-Semitic. Welcome to the Last Dispensation. You're living in it.
We don't really know where the world is gonna go, but now everybody knows that you can't stop for too long. Got to keep going. Don't really know where the world is gonna go.
Brothers and sisters, when speaking truth requires navigating between anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and blind Zionist loyalty, you know that we've entered an era that we need to be careful, very careful, that we need to slowly back out of that, because we're going back to the 1930s and 40s. An era where good is called evil and evil is called good. I want you to focus on nuances, brothers and sisters. Life is not black and white thinking. And you'll even hear Mark Dice say that. But I really feel that he needs to follow what he's talking about. Like I said, I watch Mark Dice. I watch Tucker Carlson. I watch a lot of these men. I watch Joe Rogan. But I want to teach you guys something, and I want you to listen. Please listen without bias. Please.
Brandon Tatum, a very popular black conservative YouTuber who I gave a shout out to back in 2016 when he was just getting started, because I thought it'd be good to have more black Trump supporters visible on social media. But as we all know, if you back a DEI hire, it never turns out well. And now Turncoat Tatum is trying to undermine Charlie Kirk's last wishes for Turning Point USA by trying to get them to sever ties with Tucker Carlson, posting this just the other day. I will always support Turning Point USA. Tucker Carlson is antithetical to what TPUSA stands for, which is interesting because Charlie Kirk stood by Tucker and lost millions of dollars a year in donations from wealthy Jewish donors because he wouldn't cancel Tucker from their primary major event coming up in December, America Fest. I do not support him at any TPUSA event. He should not be there, period.
Okay, right here, I must agree with Brandon Tatum on one crucial point. Tucker Carlson appears to be engaging in the same black and white thinking he often, very often, criticizes in others. But here's where we need to get serious about nuance, folks. The danger is not just Tucker's rhetoric, right? It's the binary thinking, brothers and sisters, the binary thinking that plagues our entire movement. And when I say our entire movement, I mean the entire conservative movement. I mean those who are constitutionalists, whether you call yourself a libertarian, you believe in freedom. Those who believe in freedom, it screws up the movement, okay? Black and white thinking sucks. And I'm seeing a lot of these guys think that way and group people just like the left does. As someone whose own faith, and you are one of them, you are one of those people with the same faith that I have, for those of us whose own faith tradition faced vicious persecution based on conspiracy theories and lies during Joseph Smith's era, I understand how dangerous it becomes when we paint entire groups with broad brushes. We don't even have to be LDS to understand that. We just have to remember World War I and World War II, especially World War II, where Jews were pushed out of Germany, put into concentration camps. And it wasn't just Jews. Look at the Russians. Look at just black and white thinking. Brandon Tatum is right that we cannot engage. And this doesn't mean that I disagree or I don't like these pundits. I even sometimes I watch Nick Fuentes. I think that he's going a little too far in a certain area that he shouldn't, and it's not the love of Christ. But he also, I don't think that he's anti-white, but don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure about that. I don't know him that well. But what I'm saying is a lot of these pundits that I'm mentioning, I still watch them on certain things. But you have to be careful. You have to be careful not to throw away legitimate theological discussions about Israel's role in prophecy. This isn't about genetics or thinking that it's not about that, okay? It's not about thinking that the Jews are a chosen people beyond anyone that believes in Christ. No, but they are still important in latter-day prophecy. The question is not whether we should criticize bad actors. It's whether we can maintain our Christian charity while doing so. Okay? So before you comment in the comment section something to me about anything, you need to watch the whole video first and then comment. Don't start commenting in the first 5 minutes and then click off when you're going to sound like an idiot.
Again, that's not what Charlie thought, but you know what? Brandon Tatum knows what's best. He went on to dangle a $1 million donation in front of Turning Point while suggesting that they sever ties with Tucker, saying that a friend asked me whether he should donate $500,000 to Turning Point USA. I said yes. We are raising $1 million to give to Erica, which she might use for TPUSA. TPUSA serves a bigger purpose than speakers on stage, but supporting Tucker is wrong for TPUSA. TPUSA has never supported a person like him spewing anti-Semitism. Again, undermining one of the last things that Charlie Kirk stood for before his assassination, that he wouldn't bow down, he wouldn't be bullied, he wouldn't be emotionally blackmailed by his Jewish donors or anyone into cutting ties with Tucker. Stay tuned because there's plenty more to come in this video, but real quick, subscribe to my channel if you're new here because, as I think you're already starting to see, you won't find another channel like this anywhere else. And we know that Charlie Kirk stood by Tucker Carlson despite losing millions of dollars a year from donors because he openly talked about this. So did Tucker. But to Candace Owens' credit, who is like a broken clock, right, twice a day, she did obtain and publish this group text message from Charlie Kirk and others where Charlie was venting about losing the money and, of course, just affirming that he was standing by Tucker, saying, just lost another huge Jewish donor, $2 million a year because we won't cancel Tucker. I'm thinking of inviting Candace. Now, he may have been serious, he may have been sarcastic. It's too hard to tell in that text message. But he did go on to say, Jewish donors play into all the stereotypes. I cannot and will not be bullied like this, leaving me no choice but to leave the pro-Israel cause.
Okay, Here's where Tucker's argument becomes deeply troubling from a Latter-day Saint and Christian perspective. When he talks about ethnically cleansing Gaza, what's he saying here, brothers and sisters? He's using language that should make, I would say, every Christ-following person uncomfortable. Why? The problem isn't that Tucker is questioning Israel's policies. That's not the problem. The problem is the spirit and manner in which he's doing it. Let me explain. As Latter-day Saints and as Christians, we believe in the promises. Okay? It's not about the Jewish people themselves. It's the promises made to the house of Israel. Okay? Yes, the gospel are those promises, but he still is keeping the promise he made to those who are in the land of Canaan, the house of Israel. Christ was a Jew. Do we forget that Christ was a Jew? And it's symbolic, brothers and sisters. The prophecies in Isaiah, the prophecies in Zechariah, Malachi, Ezekiel, Daniel, and Revelation speak clearly about God's covenants with Israel. Black and white thinking, man. Not good. If you look at Zechariah chapter 14, verse 4, prophecies that Christ himself will stand on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem. This isn't about racial superiority. No. That's not what this is about. Okay? It's not about genetics. It's not about elitism. It's about divine covenant making and keeping, that God keeps his promises. We do not believe Jews are genetically superior. So I think that Tucker Carlson needs to study the scriptures a little better and understand where Judeo-Christianism is coming from. Because that would indeed be heretical if we thought that Jews were superior to any other race. That's not what the promises of God to Abraham are. We believe God made specific promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob that remain in effect. And that's it. There's a massive difference, a major difference between believing in God's covenants and believing in racial supremacy, okay? Adolf Hitler believed in racial supremacy. The Nazis believed in racial supremacy. And I think Tucker Carlson knows that. And a lot of these men and women are sounding like opportunists in some ways.
But I want to take the start of this show to address some of the things that have been going around on public, namely about a group text chain that has been made known and released by Candace Owens. And I just want to address it head on because, that was a screen grab that I had shared with people. So it is authentic. And I want to go into it because I actually am really excited that the truth is out there. I first want to say the reason I didn't share that screen grab publicly is because it was a private exchange.
Now, to be clear, Candace's rantings and ravings over the last few weeks are sort of like the National Enquirer, mostly a bunch of garbage and fake news and nonsense, but occasionally getting something big right. Like when the National Enquirer actually broke the story of John Edwards' affair and that love child that he had with his photographer who was going around on his presidential campaign. Candace publishing the text message, okay, not exactly groundbreaking, just kind of reaffirms what was already publicly available, what Charlie himself was talking about. Candace's latest piece of evidence, however, is Charlie Kirk appearing to her in a dream to tell her she's on the right track.
I similarly, like I just said, had a vivid dream this weekend, and Charlie came to me and he told me that he was betrayed. And so for me, you don't have to believe that, but I do believe that. And
And it's hilarious because when I went off on Candace just the other day, a lot of people's brains melted and all the top thumbed up comments were people accusing me of selling out to Israel, getting the call, taking the $7,000, or being a Jew. These people, and you, if you're one of them, that are offended by me mocking Candace's crazy theories again, are engaging in what's called black and white thinking because you don't have the brain power to understand complex things. So something is either all good or all bad. And you have a short memory because you couldn't remember some of the things that I said about Ben Shapiro's favorite country just 2 days earlier. Or I don't think you have the attention span to understand what I'm about to say about it again. I and many others have Israel fatigue. We're tired of hearing about their problems. We're tired of them sucking America into their problems. We're tired of them sucking American tax dollars to deal with their problems. But people like Brandon Tatum just love what Benjamin Netanyahu's doing.
I will never change my support for the state of Israel and its existence. I don't have to like anything Benjamin Netanyahu does, although I think that what he's doing in the war is reasonable. I don't agree with everything he's doing. I think he should have finished the job 2 years ago.
He should have completely ethnically cleansed the region 2 years ago, according to Tatum and people like Laurel Loomer and Joel Pollack, the editor of Breitbart News, Mark Levin, and all the rest.
Right here. And here's something that needs to be addressed directly. Mark Dice's own past. And I have to bring it up. A lot of people do not know this, and I know that my friend Scott Palmer likes Mark Dice, and I watch Mark Dice. I do too sometimes. I watch him, okay, and I laugh at some of his sarcasm and stuff like that. But did you know that he built his early platform on anti-Mormon rhetoric? For years, he promoted conspiracy theories about Latter-day Saints that were just as vicious and unfounded as what he's now criticizing about Jewish people. And he talks about not thinking black or white, yet he's doing that. The irony is thick when someone who spent years spreading lies about Latter-day Saint conspiracies now complains about being called an anti-Semite for legitimate criticism. Now, you can hate on me all you want and say that I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. I still like Mark Dice. He doesn't do that anymore as much. He might once in a while, I think, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what his feelings are. The same with John Voight. Angelina Jolie's dad. And now Kirk Cameron. I'm still hip on Mark Dice once in a while. His media criticism is often spot on. But this is exactly what he told Candace Owens, okay? This is exactly what he told. He said, no more black and white thinking. Mark needs to apply that same standard to himself and recognize that his past anti-Mormon crusade, which it was driven by the same conspiratorial mindset he now employs somewhere else. And it's wrong. And it's hateful. You're either going to have the Spirit of Christ and do things nuanced, think nuanced, or you're going to be black and white thinking and you're not going to have the Spirit of Christ. You can claim to be a Christian and if you're not acting in a Christ-like manner, okay, that doesn't mean don't stand up for what's right. You've seen my last videos. I believe in that you can be a peacemaker and still annihilate the enemy, okay?
Because, they're only doing targeted strikes. And I didn't say they were doing a genocide. I said they were ethnically cleansing. They're obviously forcing out and coercing out an ethnic population from the region because, well, as even Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, admits, there's basically nothing left of Gaza. But, according to certain mainstream media outlets and Benjamin Netanyahu himself, they're only doing targeted strikes, don't you know? They're only going after Hamas. Even Charlie Kirk said that they were going to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and you could see how uncomfortable he was when he admitted that.
But the fact is now Bibi and the Israeli hard-right government has a mandate. I gotta be careful the way I say this.
Gotta be careful how I say this.
They're gonna try to ethnically cleanse Gaza.
Yep.
I mean, I don't use that term lightly, okay?
And this was right after the attack by Hamas, which obviously was horrific. All of the morons, whenever you have slight sympathy for the innocent civilians in Gaza, then they always accuse you of siding with Hamas. Brandon Tatum's in that inner circle of conservative ink so tight that he recently got an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu where he was proud to tell him that when he went to Israel on a Christian church trip that they only got spit on once by Jews. Of course, Laura Loomer, one of the sharks circling, trying to cancel Tucker Carlson, upset that he made a biblical reference at Charlie's memorial about how the Jewish religious leaders at the time killed Jesus for speaking the truth because it's the ultimate story about being killed to silence you by someone who disagrees with your opinions. Saying that Tucker Carlson's a lunatic and that she's not going to be giving her time or energy to anyone who supports him. And then adding, like Tatum, it's demonic. And ever since Tucker Carlson became free from Fox News and the constraints of corporate media, he could say whatever he wants. He can interview whoever he wants. And more, he's sounding an awful lot like a YouTuber that I know. Guy in his kitchen on a laptop.
And the last thing that I think we need to do to restore balance between the relationship between the United States and Israel and to restore some sanity to the public conversation on this topic is to get our theology right. And this is not a message aimed at Israelis or Jews. This is a message aimed at Christians, who are the largest group of Israel supporters in the United States. And their view of Israel is colored not just by sentimental attachment, which is fine, or trips to Israel, great, no problem, but by a Christian heresy, the oldest of the Christian heresies, which is that God somehow prefers some people based on their DNA. And of course, the whole point of Christianity is that that is no longer true, that there is no chosen people. The chosen people are people who choose Jesus. That is the Christian message right there. It's not an anti-Semitic message, by the way. It's the Christian message. It's the core Christian message. And yet there are many self-described representatives of the Christian faith, the world's largest, who are daily sending a different message. And we should be very clear. Whatever this is, it's not Christianity, it is heresy.
When Tucker talks about Christian theology regarding Israel, he's actually touching on something important, but he's getting it backwards. And you can get mad at me all you want, but you need to listen. Please listen with an open heart. You know how we say that Democrats will just stick to their party no matter what? Don't just stick to your pundit or your podcaster no matter what. It's okay to call them out when they've done something wrong or said something out of line. Christian Zionism isn't about DNA-based chosen people status. I've already said that. It's about recognizing that God's covenants with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob regarding the land of Israel remain valid. It's still a valid promise that God is going to keep with his people. And it's not just the Jewish people, but they happen to be the only ones that were left there. Okay. The gathering of Israel prophesied in Isaiah chapter 11, verse 12, and Jeremiah 31:10. Do not forget, And throughout the Book of Mormon isn't about racial superiority. It's about covenant fulfillment with the house of Israel. Yes, through Christ, all people can become part of covenant Israel, but that doesn't negate the specific promises made to the literal descendants of Jacob. Amen, brothers and sisters. Today, my wife and I were watching white liberal women, what was it, Jubilee? White liberal women debate black female conservatives. It was very interesting. And one of them started talking about LBJ and the days that the black man was kept out of the home. And one of the white liberal women said it's because the black men didn't live up to what they needed to do. And I thought, well, that was kind of racist. There was a reason. So I made up a Papa was a rolling stone. LBJ told him to get out of the home. And when he died, the welfare system thrived. Anyway. All right, back to this. So, yes, through Christ, we become Israel. We can become a covenant people with Israel. But there were still promises made to literal descendants of Jacob. The prophecies are clear. Christ will return to the Mount of Olives. Will he not? Why do we learn about these things if the Jewish people aren't important anymore, and neither is Jerusalem? This is where the second coming is going to debut. I mean, there's many second comings, but this is the main one where all people will see Christ on the Mount of Olives. This is where Armageddon's going to take place. Why would it happen there? Jerusalem will be the center, the very epicenter of his millennial reign. He's going to reign from Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Israel, and the house of Israel will be gathered.
Of course, those who know Tucker personally and aren't trying to throw him under the bus in order to jockey a higher level position within the conservative mainstream media all say that Tucker doesn't have an anti-Semitic bone in his body. And of course, as you know, if you disagree with a Jew about the best flavor of ice cream, you'll often be called an anti-Semite, because that term is thrown around almost as much, if not more so, in the last few years than the term racist, to try to silence and scare people into submission. Here's David Sachs, who is one of Elon Musk's close friends and associates, who also is Jewish, saying the obvious about Tucker.
The base of conservatism is not believing that any government is sacred.
Thank you, David Sachs!
Yeah. Every government should be subject to criticism, because we know that they will always abuse their authority. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. All governments must be subject to criticism, and governments shouldn't seek to make themselves immune by essentially calling people names. And I've known Tucker for 30 years. He doesn't have an anti-Semitic bone in his body, and it really pisses me off the way that he gets attacked for criticizing the conduct of a government.
Or when you talk about the actual theological differences between Christianity and Judaism, particularly when you point out what the Talmud, the second most holiest book in Judaism, which is the basis for rabbinic Judaism, the most popular kind of Judaism today, what it says about Jesus and about Mary. I've done videos on this in the past. Or when you talk about how Martin Luther, who basically caused the Reformation, the fracturing of the Catholic Church and Protestantism, what he wrote about Jews and Judaism in his book, The Certain Group of People and Their Lies, a book which was banned in the last 5 years from Amazon. Of course, Amazon allows all kinds of different books criticizing every basic religion, from Mormonism to Catholicism, Jehovah's Witnesses, to Islam, to Scientology, if you can even call that a religion. But certain books a little bit too critical of a certain group of people, those ones get banned. This isn't a book self-published by some crazed neo-Nazi. This is a book by the founder of Protestantism. Not to mention Culture of Critique, the book by Kevin McDonald, a former sociology professor at California State University, Long Beach. And as I've said before, and I will continue to say, in case you've been living under a rock and we need to shame the brand name conservatives into finally getting some balls, none of them ever talk about these books being banned.
Here's where we need to get nuanced, brothers and sisters, and this is crucial. There's a difference between criticizing Israeli government policies and engaging in anti-Semitic rhetoric. If you're engaging in anti-Semitic rhetoric, then you're black and white thinking. If you're criticizing Israeli government policies, you have every right to, okay? David Sacks gets this right. No government should be immune from criticism. Not even the United States of America. But when Tucker uses coded language about, quote, lamplit rooms with men eating hummus, close quote, and I know he was talking about Christ, but that was also kind of a knock against Jews. He's not engaging in policy critique. That's not a very educated thing to say, brothers and sisters, okay? He's trafficking an ancient anti-Semitic trope. And that's what he's doing. And it's very obvious. Okay? I'm not being a leftist wacko or a hack. I'm not even being a moderate hack. I love conservatism. I love the Constitution. I love America. I love President Trump. And I like a lot of things. I used to think a little bit more highly of Tucker, but he has been saying some things very similar to Candace. That doesn't mean I don't believe in secret combinations, brothers and sisters. But the same conspiracy theories that led to our persecution and Joseph Smith's death in the 1800s, they're being recycled against Jewish people, and it might start coming our way as well. Secret combinations exist. I believe it. Doggone it.
Mama made breakfast burritos.
I believe in that scriptural doctrine, okay? I believe in Ezra Taft Benson's words and many others. But we can't paint an entire ethnic. That's Nazism, bro. You're going to put people in concentration camps again? Really? You can't paint an entire ethnic or religious group as monolithic conspiracies. You can't do that. That's not Christian. And it's not accurate.
Again, be sure to subscribe to my channel if you're new here, because I think it's abundantly clear now. You're not going to find another channel like this anywhere else. Let's keep going. A few more clips, a couple more things to cover here. This is Josh Hammer, who is an editor over at Newsweek magazine, and he calls Tucker Carlson the biggest and most dangerous anti-Semite in America.
What Charlie was essentially trying to do was he was essentially trying to figure out how to navigate this to keep the Nick Fuentes neo-Nazi Groyper stuff at bay while trying to meet the younger generation, the Gen Z folks who are pretty wobbly on this issue.
Who couldn't care less about Israel, who don't want anything to do with it, who also have Israel fatigue. But please continue.
Kind of meet them on their own terms and to try to kind of guide them towards a better place without using kind of the outmoded rhetoric and talking points of kind of the 1970s, 1980s boomers. That's essentially what he was trying to do. Now, we can quibble as to whether he made the right decision here or there. I happen to not like that Tucker Carlson speaks at Turning Point USA events. I think Tucker Carlson is a malicious anti-Semite. I think he's the most dangerous anti-Semite in the history of the United States. I think he is a profoundly dangerous man. I genuinely feel that way, actually. So
Now, this is a guy who claims that he was in regular communication with Charlie Kirk up until the night before he was assassinated. And he is one of those sharks circling TPUSA now, trying to form it into their own image instead of the image and the plan and the agenda that Charlie Kirk had set out. So many people have soured on Israel over the last few years that the taboo of never criticizing them ever has obviously been broken, and the floodgates just went wide open. Here's Congressman Matt Gaetz talking about the influence of AIPAC, something that you would never hear talked about in mainstream conservative circles ever, because that's, kind of looking behind the curtain a little bit too close as to how our foreign policy is manipulated by those with allegiance to a foreign country.
Initially, I resented the fact that there was no appreciation for nuance. Like if you asked any questions about any decision of the Israeli government in any place regarding settlements, regarding Gaza, whatever, you were like, you had deviated from the script. And I just, in any policy area, I had resentment over that. And then I saw the way the AIPAC worked, and that was weird for like a country lawyer like me. I remember my first AIPAC reception, and like your fundraiser tells you have to go, and your chief of staff tells you have to go.
Over to Israel.
Your committee chairman all tell you have to go. And you get there and you wear this name badge. And I remember there's a QR code on it. And what we were supposed to do was go talk to donors. And then if they liked you, they scanned your QR code to make a donation, like on the spot. And so can you just imagine how demoralizing that is to like be told that your job for the next several hours to go chat people up, hoping they would scan you like a can of tomato soup on the way out of the meeting.
I mean, it's literally purchasing.
Right. And so I saw that and I was like, wow, that is so freaking weird.
As someone whose religious ancestors were literally driven from state to state, tarred and feathered, and ultimately saw their prophet murdered by a mob, I can't stand by while similar hatred is directed at any other people. And it is, brothers and sisters. Joseph Smith was killed because of conspiracy theories and lies. The same dynamics Tucker employs. It is. Taking isolated incidents, weaving, and Candace Owens, she keeps having these dreams, weaving them into grand conspiracies and using coded language to inflame passions. That led our prophet, Joseph Smith, directly to Carthage jail. When we engage in this kind of rhetoric, we're not following Christ's example of love and truth-telling. It's nuanced, and we need to get what's right, and make sure what's wrong stays wrong. But here's the key difference. Joseph Smith and early Latter-day Saints were persecuted for their religious beliefs and practices. The criticism, hear me out, please. The criticism wasn't about legitimate policy concerns. It was about hatred of the other. When we see similar patterns emerging against any group, and we start grouping them and saying, look at this book written by Martin Luther. Are you kidding me? And this anime, or this caricature of a Jewish man, like he's a Neanderthal or some caveman or a savage. They got this cartoon of him, of a Jew looking like some barbarian or some Neanderthal. When you see stuff like that emerging, brothers and sisters, against any group, Christians should be the first to say this is wrong. I know I have Joel Skousen on that says that Benjamin Netanyahu is a protege of Henry Kissinger, and that might be right, and but that doesn't mean that every Jew and every political Jew, even, and every one that lives in Jerusalem who happens to be an Orthodox Jew or a conservative Jew or Ashkenazi Jew, or I don't know, what do you call the ones from New York? Love you too. Hasidic Jews, and it goes on. They're all different. They're just people. Look, I know there's corruption in every walk of life. And there's been some lies told about Latter-day Saints lately. Like I said, you're those people that the Daybells, the Warren Jeffs, Sister Wives. These aren't Christians. These are Mormons. They don't represent us, do they? No. They don't. I'm just saying be careful. I'm not saying that there's not some truth in some of this conspiracy. But you've got to be careful. I think that Christians and Latter-day Saints should be the first to say that this is wrong.
Oh, it's weird, all right. And Charlie Kirk started to notice these things too.
25%. You go under 35, you have almost zero support across the United States.
Under 35, people under 35-year-olds just couldn't care less about what is happening between the ethnic land dispute that's been going on for over 75 years, really for thousands of years over there, but in its modern form, 75 years over there in the Middle East.
Your closest ally. I see what's happening, and it's my job to comment honestly on it, but I am sick of being lectured on you have to see it exactly as we see it and support everything, or you're against us.
You can't disagree with a Jew about the best flavor of ice cream. Otherwise, you're fomenting another Holocaust.
So this is so important, Megan. And again, I don't want you cannot say everyone in the pro-Israel, and I don't say it, acts that way. But I got texts about you, Megan, saying, why is Megan doing the bidding of Hamas? I was like, what are you talking about? Megan's the best.
So what should be our response as Latter-day Saints? Since we understand, I think that, and as Christians, I think that first we can acknowledge that there are legitimate policy questions about Israel without resorting to anti-Semitic tropes. Matt Gaetz' concerns about AIPAC influence, those are fair game for political discussion. They are. But Tucker Carlson's implications about Jewish control and manipulation cross a line into ancient hatred. There might be some of that going on, but you don't. Just like there are corrupt people that are members of the church. Do we need to hate the whole leadership and group all of us into that together and keep spouting out the same rhetorical lines about Mormon corruption, Latter-day Saint corruption until we're all just corrupt in the eyes of the world? That's what happened in Germany. All the Jews own the jewelry stores and the banks and then this and that. Well, it's because they worked hard for it, and a lot of the German people settled for a lot of the blue collar jobs. You don't hate a people because they're prosperous. You read the scriptures and find out why, maybe. Second, we must remember that our theology, brothers and sisters, teaches us that people have agency and that they are individuals, and not all Jewish people think alike, just like not all Christians think alike, and not all Latter-day Saints think alike. The Book of Mormon warns us against secret combinations, but it also teaches us to judge righteously and avoid condemning entire groups of people and grouping them, labeling them. Third, we can support Israel's right to exist and defend itself while still calling out specific policies we disagree with. This isn't complicated. It's called nuance. Did you know for decades, people would be sitting in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem and in cafes, and just rockets would be shooting over all the time, and nobody did a damn thing about it? You know what we had to finally do to Japan to stop them from kamikazing the crap out of us and from leaving us alone is we had to bomb the crap out of Japan, and it's sad. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that is the saddest story. And I have questions about wondering if we even should have done that. We had to bomb, the British and the United States had to bomb the crap out of Germany in order to get them to stop.
Billy Graham struggled with the same thing, but he didn't talk about it publicly, although he did talk about it privately, or what he thought was privately, in the Oval Office with President Richard Nixon. But what he didn't know is that Richard Nixon recorded all of those conversations in the infamous Nixon White House tapes, which were then later published, where the entire world got to hear Billy Graham admit this.
I'm more conservative than you are. At least you told me that one time, and I think that's true. But I have to lean a little bit. You know, I go and I keep friends with Mr. Rosenthal at the New York Times and people of that sort, you know. And not all the Jews, but a lot of the Jews are great friends of mine. They swarm around me and they're friendly to me because they know that I'm friendly to Israel. But they don't know how I really feel about what they're doing to this country. And I have no power, no way to handle them. But I would stand up if you know, under proper circumstances.
Oh, you never heard that before. Well, you obviously didn't read my last book, The War on Conservatives. And I've been trying to tell you, you're not going to get this kind of information from any of the mainstream YouTubers, podcasters, Newsmax, Fox News hosts, okay? You're only going to get it right here. So be sure to subscribe.
Here's my final point, and it's crucial, okay? And it's not what you think. Brandon Tatum is wrong to try to silence Tucker entirely. And I'm not trying to silence anyone. But Tucker is wrong to traffic in anti-Semitic talk. Charlie Kirk understood something that both of these men are missing. You can create space for difficult conversation without abandoning basic human decency. You can. Because the prophecies about Israel's gathering and Christ's return to Jerusalem aren't about Tucker or Mark or Candace or anyone else. And it's not about racial supremacy. They're about covenant fulfillment. That's it. And if you're going to turn that into something bad, then you're not reading your scriptures. We can believe in these prophecies. We can even support Israel's right to exist and criticize specific policies when necessary. But on individual policy, take them apart and abandon them and criticize them where needed. And still treat all people with Christian love and respect. That's what nuance looks like. That's the opposite of black and white thinking. That's what Christ-like thinking demands, brothers and sisters. And that's what the conservative movement and constitutionalism and nationalism desperately needs more of. The ability to hold complex truth in tension without resorting to crap that we, for a very long time, looked down upon. Simplistic black and white labeling and thinking. The gospel of Jesus Christ, brothers and sisters, calls us to something higher than this, doesn't it? The spirit of charity. Let's rise to that standard.